Welcome in to the PFF NFL betting show for Week 14. Mason Cameron, Ben Linsey, joining us remotely, Judah Fortgang. Boys, we had a big holiday weekend. Behind the scenes, we've been talking. Judah, I know you hit a pretty big weekend here. Tell us about it. How was your holiday?
The holiday was great. I mean, I think Thanksgiving probably the best day on the calendar, at least for me. Family, food, football, tough to beat. Yeah, definitely on the Bears, which was nice, and then ended up long kind of all of the winning teams, which was great. I came awfully close to hitting a 1,500 to 1 SGP as well. If the Falcons pulled that one off in overtime, that would have been pretty special. Shout out to AD Mitchell there. But yeah, what a weekend of football, and stoked to parlay that into December. We still got so much season left. I was like, oh man, we're coming up on the end. Then you remember, we got plenty of time.
There's plenty of time to make some money, and we're here to do it. Ben, how was your weekend? I know we were talking a little Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, no, Isaiah Likely was a nice into Thanksgiving on some of his receiving odds. But yeah, I Bengals and Bears was a good way to head into the weekend last week.
Yep, and we had it wasn't a great game for a lot of it on this Thursday night matchup between the Cowboys and the Lions. It ended up being a game there for a little bit, 30-44, but the Lions do end up covering at -3. We had the over at 55.5 is I think what it closed at we're seeing here. Ben, what did you make of that matchup last night?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is I was kind of wary of this Cowboys defense thing last week in the Chiefs game, and the Chiefs were able to move the ball a little bit on Dallas, and then we just saw it last night against Detroit. Amon-Ra did end up playing to everyone's surprise, but the Lions very effective and very pass-heavy in that game against Dallas, and they were really picking on their cornerbacks and their linebackers covering Gibbs out of the backfield. Right, we saw a couple angle routes getting Gibbs running with a head of steam over the middle. We saw Siobhan Revell have a really tough game on the outside for Dallas, and that's still a concern. Right, that interior is improved, but they weren't really able to impact Goff with any regularity in that game. And then the Lions were able to do enough defensively to make Dak uncomfortable in a way that we haven't really seen a lot this year. And yes, CeeDee Lamb was out the second half, but even before he went out in that first half, right, there were multiple plays where I thought this is the Lions defense that plays a lot of man coverage. They don't really change what they do. I thought that was going to play into Dallas's hands, and I thought the Cowboys would be able to win this game. But that's not really how it turned out, right? And George Pickens, we saw the other side of the George Pickens experience last night, right? Where a lot of the season, amazing ball tracking, great hands, right? Unorthodox yards after the catch ability. He has all that. He's super talented. You also see some of the laziest routes you've ever seen in your life, and that is what we saw last night against Dallas.
Yeah, it's a tough look. They gave him the too high. They really changed a lot of what they did defensively, the Lions being they. And it really affected Pickens. It really affected his Pickens to move down the field, to really stretch the field. And the Cowboys just didn't have a lot of answers for that after CeeDee Lamb went down getting banged up. And then Gibbs, 7 for 77 through the air. You put Deron Bland on a poster. That was an incredible play right there. Judah, what did you make of this matchup?
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, and I'm not the biggest Dan Campbell stan here, but I think there was just a kind of mismatch in approach to this game from a Lions perspective of they, as Ben said, just did not do a ton on the ground. Montgomery had a bunch of carries, but they did not run. Montgomery had a bunch of success running, but they went with a real pass-heavy approach, which I think is exactly how you have to approach the Cowboys offense, the Cowboys defense in its current state that's been dominant against the run since Quinn Williams has arrived. And on the Cowboys side, there were just too many kind of field goal situations where I think Burgos wasted runs. There was a sequence, I want to say mid-second quarter, where they get to field goal range, take a deep shot on first down, run the ball on second down. You can't be wasting series like that in a crucial matchup, and it kind of elevates the chance. But the Lions were able to generate pressure all night long, and especially late in the game. I think Dak did an unbelievable job mitigating that, and I think he played a terrific game. But the same was not true of the Dallas defense, and they were generating pressure in the first quarter and making Goff uncomfortable. And then this is not a team that can cover well. I was surprised how productive Amon-Ra St. Brown was.
Nope, we might have lost Judah there at the end there, but no, I completely agree with Judah's sentiment here. Sometimes it feels like the Cowboys get a bit complacent with knowing that they have Brandon Aubrey. That there was that sequence there in that first half, I believe, where they really did just get on the back burner, and then I'm sitting there watching the game with Dalton, and we're thinking, oh, okay, well, they're just sort of mailing this one in. And then they trot Aubrey out there for a 63-yard field goal, and he hits that. Judah, I think we lost you there at the end of your thoughts there. Go ahead and cap it off.
You covered it. It's a little bit of complacency and just the kind of base rate from the Lions here. I think game plan wise was better, and they're the better team, despite I think Dak playing an unbelievable game. And turnovers also. That's ultimately what this game probably came down to, is that last drive in the second half. The first drive in the second half, that interception right there turns the game. So that's football.
Yep, that's how it goes sometimes. Judah, I know because we write the early line look ahead, and you were on the Cowboys at +3, and yeah, I talked heavily about the Cowboys +3 in our breakdown of Thursday Night Football just yesterday, and I was a little bit shocked on how it swung the tide so much, but that is football. It's a week to week, and teams, they get paid a lot of money to scheme against each other for things like this. So definitely hats off to the Detroit Lions. They played really well. And if you guys want all the data from that game, the data is live right now in Premium Stats. Make sure you guys go check that out. In order to do that, you need a PFF Plus subscription, and you can get that on sale right now for 30% off with promo code HOLIDAY30. That gets you our PFF player prop tool, unlimited mock draft simulator runs, and all the data trusted by all 32 NFL teams. Again, that's 30% off. Promo code HOLIDAY30. Make sure you guys go check it out. And of course, boys, we have some big games this week. We have some good ones. We have a nice one on Sunday night that I'm a little heavy on here. So we'll see how that one goes. And of course, if any of you guys want to get in on the action over at DraftKings, make sure you guys are using promo code PFF. That is going to help you get some promos, get some promo codes in there, and get you some extra bonus credits. So make sure you guys go use promo code PFF. So let's jump into it, boys. We have a lot of good games on the market. Judah, you're a smart guy. I really love your angles here. Tell us about your game market bet of the week this week.
Yeah, I'm going with a alt in what I guess. I haven't done too much on this show, but it's definitely characteristic and something right up on PFF.com. That's the Bears money line. Going to kind of run this back from last week, but I think the kind of core angles are almost twofold. Number one, this is a Chicago offense that I think has such a high floor of success given their ground game right now. They've done this against virtually every opponent the last 10 weeks. Where they just have not had a below 50th percentile run game. We obviously saw that on full display against the Eagles. That was kind of my core angle in what we wrote up at PFF. That the Eagles' run defense had been great, but the Bears have such a high rate of success. And then like Caleb Williams has done an unbelievable job this year avoiding sacks. And you're just not going to kill so many drives. You have a huge rate of success. And I think this is a very overrated Packers defense. I mean, Micah Parsons is insane. That there's no denying that. But the pass rush outside of him is frankly bad and has gotten hurt. And if you look at the kind of like defensive numbers, I think they're kind of popped up by like playing really bad quarterbacks. Like this is a defense that's generated negative 0.7 EPA per play against JJ McCarthy in week 11. But if you want to look at how they played against Carolina, how they played against Philly, how they played against the Giants, how they played against Detroit, these past defense numbers, the worst they have is the best they have is a 0.1 EPA per play in pass defense. It has not been a good defense over the last 6 weeks or so as kind of these pass rush injuries. I mean, Wyatt went out. He's been hurt basically since then. I think this is a very, very overrated defense by market standards. And then this is a Bears team which has gotten a lot healthier. They return Jalen Johnson. They return Kyler Gordon. We'll see about TJ Edwards this week. The Packers have not really been able to establish the ground game in the same way that they have in previous seasons. And they themselves are dealing with a ton of wide receiver injuries. I mean, these guys are constantly in and out. But I think the market hasn't caught up quite yet to this Bears defense in its current form. And I think this number makes sense if you want to look at kind of the full season's worth of data. But I think we kind of need to update given where these teams are and accounting for injuries, accounting for how the Packers defense has played. I can't get there to the current number, and especially with a Bears offense that I think is really kind of finding its groove. We'll see about Rome Odunze. I think getting Luther Burden some actual snaps has really elevated the passing offense. Kind of like Zacchaeus as your wide receiver 3 is kind of a black hole to Luther Burden actually being very productive and able to stretch defenses down the field. I think this is a Bears team that's mispriced. I think it's a Packers team that's mispriced, and I think they're very, very live to win this game.
I'm right there with you, and I love your note here on Luther Burden. Just some more background there. Luther Burden has been incredibly productive. 2.19 yards per route run. That ranks 12th most among wide receivers with 150 routes, and he just hasn't really been getting the snaps in previous weeks or leading up to these moments. And now this has been a guy who's really been extremely productive when we have seen him on the field. Ben, I know that you've highlighted him quite a few. I'm pretty sure that we talked about him on Thanksgiving, and he has just been a huge difference maker to this team. And then when we talk about just the difference in what we've seen of this team, I don't know about you guys, I'm continually shocked that Green Bay is constantly -6.5, -7. And I get that they're at home here, but they have just not really been productive in covering games like that. They play close games. They win a lot of them, but there's just been a lot of instances where they have not been as productive against the spread. Now, when we talk about those big lines, they've only covered one game of more than -6 this season, and that was that game against the Vikings. And we've talked about the Vikings ad nauseum, is that they're just not very productive right now. JJ McCarthy is not a functional quarterback, and I just don't see where this continues to be the line that we see. This is the exact same line that we saw for that Vikings game in Green Bay. I just don't see where we're equating what the Vikings are doing with what we've seen out of the Bears right now. The Bears are incredible, and if you guys haven't watched it, go watch Dalton's breakdown on the Bears running game. It is masterful. What Ben Johnson is doing with this team right now is incredible, because I don't even know how you're supposed to fit the run against what they're doing. It's actually insane. He takes guys, he motions them into the backfield, and then he moves them away from the play side, and it just completely, everything falls apart. And then he'll come back around, he'll motion a jet sweep, and you think that they're not going to take it because he's motioned that jet sweep 3 times, and then he just, little handoff right there. And they just keep doing that. And I don't know what you're supposed to do. Vic Fangio talked about it. He said, I just did not have the guys prepared for all of those looks. And I don't know how any defensive coordinator is supposed to have guys prepared for those type of looks. I agree with you. I think that this is a severely mispriced line, in my opinion. Ben, what do you make of this matchup?
Yeah, I think saying that they have a high floor on offense is the right way to put it with the run game and what they've been able to do. It's interesting. They're the 1 seed in the NFC right now. It seems like no one is saying that they're coming out of the NFC, right? If you just look, it looks like people still have Rams, people still have even like Eagles, Packers, right, ahead of this team. And this is a big close to the season for them to kind of prove that they belong in that conversation. They have Green Bay twice, they have Detroit, they have San Francisco, and then Cleveland is the other game. Basically for them to get to that level, right, I think you just need more consistency from Caleb Williams. He has taken steps this year. He's done a great job avoiding sacks, like Judah called out. He still has the second highest uncatchable pass rate in the NFL this year among quarterbacks with 100-plus attempts. He's behind only Davis Mills, right? So that is what needs to improve for the Bears to be real contenders, because I do think the defense, right, getting Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon back, right, that unit should be better than what we saw early in the season.
I do agree with you, because we've seen some really Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of play from Caleb Williams at times. I think he's been much more improved, but to be honest, I think that this run game has done so well that it disguises a lot of those issues and a lot of the issues that we've seen on the defense. And when you can run the ball with success, I think that's really equated to their success as a team. I mean, just last week, I mean, we continue to talk about trying to, catch the falling knife of trying to decide which one of these Bears running backs to bet on every week, because it'd be great. You know that they're going to do really well, but it's either one or the other. And then this past week, it was both. You had DeAndre Swift, 18 for 125, 6.9 yards per carry. Kyle Monangai, 22 for 130, 5.9 yards per carry. So it's just situations like that. I know you're not going to have production like that on the ground every single week, but I think that there is value to a team that can keep the ball out of the opposing offense's hands, because your defense isn't up to snuff. So doing that has really been productive for them. So I'm really interested in to see how this thing shakes out down the stretch, and hey, go Bears. Bear down. So it's going to be a good one. Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're targeting this week in your game market bet?
Yeah, well, let's go to Monday night. I like the Chargers money line. It's plus 130 when I was looking at it last night. It's down to plus 124 on DraftKings. This has kind of moved towards Los Angeles. The spread was 3. It's down to 2.5. First off, I'm assuming Justin Herbert is playing. I will not be betting on the Chargers, or I don't want to be betting on the Chargers if Trey Lance is playing. But Herbert, limited practice on Thursday after the hand. I think he had surgery, right? He had some sort of procedure on his hand. It's non-throwing hand, but limited practice in the first day. He came back in that game. Like I'm just going to assume that he's in there. And the start of this kind of reasoning is two major pieces on both sides of the ball look like they're going to be out for Philadelphia. Lane Johnson still looks like he's going to be out. He didn't practice on Thursday with the Liz Frank injury. Talked a little bit about it last week, but this Eagles offense without Lane Johnson on the field the last 3 years, and generally don't want to look at on-off splits too hard with single players and some of the samples if you're looking at offensive lineman, defensive lineman, but their offense has been terrible without Lane Johnson on the field the last 3 years. Lowest scoring drive rate the last 3 years is the Browns, 27%, the Giants, 29%, and then the Eagles without Lane Johnson, 29%. Right? And that's not a tiny sample, right? There's at least a couple games in there. And this is also a Chargers defense that is the type of defense I want to fade Philadelphia against. Right? It's a heavy zone defense. They don't give up explosive pass plays. And if this was the Eagles last year, it's like, all right, they'll just run on them. And the Eagles have not been able to run the ball with any consistency this year, right? So I don't think they will be against this Chargers defense, whose run defense has improved a little bit from early in the season, getting Khalil Mack back, getting Denzel Perryman back. They've been a little bit better kind of since both those pieces came back on the defense. And I don't think the Eagles are going to be able to hit explosive plays downfield, right? So it's just an offense that I think is going to stall out. And then on the other side of the ball, it looks like Jalen Carter's probably. I think Jalen Carter was already ruled out for this game, right? And you look at just there's been I think 3 games that he's missed the last 2 years. So again, small sample. One of them was the Week 18 game last year. But with him off the field, they're allowing a 47% rushing success rate, which would be last in the NFL. So this is a defense that got run on last week. Their run defense has generally been good, but there was like early in the season they were getting run on a little bit. Without Jalen Carter, I think the Chargers might be able to have some success there. It looks like there's a chance Marion Hampton comes back to pair him with Kamani Vidal. And their secondary, we've talked about it. It's a good defense. There are weak points. Cornerback 2, safety with Andrew Makuba out. And this is a Chargers offense with Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, with Rondé Gadsden, with Keenan Allen. Like, they have enough weapons to take advantage of that, assuming the offensive line can hold up, and it helps the offensive line hold up when Jalen Carter isn't there to wreck the game on the interior. So this is a game where I don't necessarily think the Chargers should be underdogs, and I like them on the money line.
Do you have any concerns about the Chargers' offensive line and some of their injuries and the increase in pass rushing production off the edge that we've seen from the Eagles since the trade for Jalen Phillips, since Nolan Smith came back healthy? Is that at all a concern for you, or do you think that they can maybe scheme away from that and sort of take that pressure off of Herbert?
Yeah, I mean, sure, it's obviously a concern, and it's been a concern all year for Los Angeles with the injuries they've had to tackle. But I do think that they'll be able to run the ball with some success in this matchup. And the Eagles have also not been very good versus play action, right? And I think that's an approach that the Chargers are going to take. They're going to try to run the ball. They're going to take play action shots. And there's also these chances that you can create quick separation against the Dory Jackson or whoever is on the outside over there. And Herbert is able, Herbert historically has been one of the better quarterbacks at mitigating pressure. He's been under a lot of it. He's been hit a ton, but he is good at mitigating pressure. Yes, it's a concern, but I have more concerns about the Philadelphia side and kind of the inverse. Jalen Hurts has not done a good job of dealing with pressure. He invites pressure, and now you don't have Lane Johnson, and I'm a little bit more concerned on that side of the ball.
And I believe Omarion Hampton potentially a chance to come back this week, so that's going to be an interesting one. Kamani Vidal has been an excellent reserve player for them. He's really popped off a few weeks, so that could definitely be the secret sauce for them to nullify that pass rush. Judah, do you have any insight on this matchup?
Yeah, I think the Herbert injury is obviously the kind of drawback to LA. I don't like to bet on effectively guessing on player health and how much a hand injury influences him. My guess is it's not so much, or non-throwing hands, and he was fine last week. And to Ben's point, Herbert has been unbelievable mitigating. And if you just look at his scramble rate from weeks 1 through 6, he basically did not have a week above a 20% scramble rate. It's 16, 15, 13, 13, and then the last bunch of weeks is 23, 43, 27, 24. He's done a great job creating, and he takes those hits. And I definitely fully with Ben in terms of fading the Eagles offense against the Chargers defense, which has been good, and is exactly the spot where Hurts struggles. Zone heavy team, and the Eagles without Jalen Carter is a very different defense. So I also would lean Chargers here.
And an interesting thing, obviously this Chargers offense, Justin Herbert is such a big piece of it, and you want to see Justin Herbert playing. I know that there's some alarm if Trey Lance were to start in this situation, or frankly any situation, but something that Dalton actually woke me up to. We were talking about this matchup, and something Dalton said is, who is Trey Lance's player comp? Who would Trey Lance's player comp be?
I've got nothing. I haven't sat thinking about Trey Lance player comps. I liked him a little bit when he got to San Francisco, but I think that interest has waned given what we've seen on the field.
Well, I think it comes more down to the play caller too. I mean, it'd be a similar situation to what we saw when Colin Kaepernick played with Greg Roman. where they're a very similar player, where a lot of athleticism and what they could accomplish on the field. I mean, it could be a similar thing. We saw some success from Trey Lance in the preseason. So while, yes, you don't want Justin Herbert to be out of that game in any means, but I don't think that this team would be necessarily dead on the water. Now, obviously, you don't want a situation where you're wheeling Trey Lance out behind what we've seen this Chargers offensive line. But I think there is a circumstance where this team can be productive, even if Justin Herbert were potentially not going to play. Now, I don't know if I would take them on the money line in that situation, but I do like your read here. I think that there is some opportunity on that front. And we're actually going to head into another primetime matchup with the Sunday matchup in my game bet of the week. Boys, I'm taking Houston here. I'm taking Houston +3 and the hook at KC. And really, the big thing for me, boys, is that these teams have just been moving in opposite directions. Houston, 4 straight wins, 3-1 against the spread, 2 outright wins as the dog. And if you guys look up here on our scores and schedules in our game breakdown, you guys can get all of this data, again, with a PFF Plus subscription. It's all of our betting data breakdown and an overview of the entire game. You can get that over on PFF.com. And of course, if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription yet, go do that. 30% off. Holiday 30 is the code. If you look over at the top right section of what we see here with the spread, you can see our model is placing this game at about a +3. So getting the hook here is immense value. It's equating out to about 3.2%. And when we talk about value in some of these spreads on games, it doesn't usually reach up into a high level like this, where it's moved a little bit as far as the money has come in, but there is a little bit of sharp action here on what we've seen for the Texans. And I think it is because we have to understand that this isn't the same Chiefs team that we saw even just a few weeks ago. 1-3 straight up in November, 0-4 against the spread, all of those games as favorites. And I mean, it's one of these things where, yes, I think a lot of people are going to call back to what we saw during the 2 matchups between these teams last year on Christmas Day and in the playoff game. But really, I think you can sort of explain away some of the deficiencies we saw in Houston and why that won't be the case this year. If we just think back to that game on Christmas last year, Ben, this team was doing pretty well against KC. And then that devastating Tank Dell injury, it really just took the wind out of the sails for this Texans offense. And KC was just able to key off of Nico Collins. They didn't have enough options in the receiving game. And they really, really threw the kitchen sink at CJ Stroud. Steve Spagnuolo threw blitzes, he threw stunts, he threw simulated pressures, he threw everything at this offense to really make CJ Stroud uncomfortable. And you could tell. And when you're keying on a guy's best receiver, they're playing from behind, and you're throwing the kitchen sink at him, it's just not going to equate to a ton of success. Last year in those 2 games, Stroud had a 3.2 second time to throw. That is high. That is very, very high. And they took advantage of that. Like I said, Steve Spagnuolo ran 2 of his highest blitz rate and stunt rate games last season in those matchups. And Houston's pass protection just could not figure that out. In those combined games, they had a 49.3 pass blocking grade and a 42.5% pressure rate allowed. In the playoff game, it was 50%. That's a bad look. But I don't think that that's going to be the case this year when we talk about what we've seen from Houston. Stroud is getting the ball out much quicker. It is a function of this offense. 2.87 second time to throw, still not like among the fastest in the league. Like we see guys like Stafford throw about like 2.5 seconds on average. But 2.87 seconds is a huge improvement over what we've seen Stroud over his career. And that's something that they continue to do. And now when he plays worse, it's because he's holding on to the ball a little bit too long. But this is the best mark of his career. And when we talk about the pass protection, we've seen a lot of improvement from them. Now, their overall season metrics don't look great because the first month of the year, they were not good. They were still a pretty bad unit. They were figuring things out. But since week 5, they're 6th in pressure rate allowed. They're 4th in pass blocking efficiency versus the stunt, and 6th in pass blocking efficiency picking up the blitz. More weapons. Jaden Higgins. Xavier Hutchinson's figuring it out. Jalen Noel. All Iowa State guys, by the way. These are pieces that have been paramount to why they've been able to be a successful team. Now, Nico Collins is still an excellent player, and he's still a big reason why they're a successful offense when they have success. But I think while this isn't a world-beating offense, they're 12th in scoring drive percentage since week 5, since they've figured it out up front, and since they've sort of found their identity. And that's without a really high-profile running game, and that's with really still a, semi-middling offensive line. So I think we have an opportunity here where they can keep pace, particularly when we talk about what this defense does. I mean, this defense sets the table. We know that. They're first in EPA allowed per play. They're first in scoring drive percentage allowed. And then when we look at KC offensively, they just haven't been as potent. It's like I talked about. From weeks 3 to 8, we talked about this a lot. This KC team looked like they were back to that 2022 level, 2021 level where they were just unstoppable. They were first in positive EPA percentage at over 51%. Touchdown drive percentage, second, 38.6%. Weeks 9 through 13, they're 11th in positive EPA percentage, 44.9%. Touchdown drive percentage, just over 22%, 16th. I don't think that that's enough when you talk about coming up against a juggernaut that is this Texans defense. And it's going to get a little bit further. I'm going to jump into my player prop of the week because it's in this same game here. I'm taking Will Anderson to go over 0.75 sacks at minus, I think it's 105 right now. And this is where I think the big difference in this matchup is going to be. Is this Texans pass rush versus this Chiefs banged up offensive line? Josh Simmons on the IR. Jawan Taylor, DNP at practice. It's looking like they're not going to have Trey Smith again. So that means, per Andy Reid, we're going to get Jalen Moore at right tackle, Wanya Morris at left tackle, and Mike Caliendo at right guard. Now, obviously that doesn't sound great on paper. They could move things around. I honestly expected to see a little bit more of Jalen Moore at left tackle than right tackle, but I think that, we saw that group come out late in their last game against Dallas, and it was not good. It was very bad. 15.8 pass blocking grade when all 3 of those guys were on the field. They allowed a 50% pressure rate against Dallas on the edge. Now, Dallas isn't a slouch in pass rushing productivity. That's something that we've talked about a little bit this year, where they've been much more improved than we necessarily thought, and getting Quinnen Williams has been a boost to that. But when we talk about what we've seen from Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter, I like both of these guys. I'm probably going to be playing some ladders for both, but my favorite is going to be taking Will Anderson to go over the 0.75 here. Of the top 5 highest pass rush win rate defenders in the NFL, obviously you have Myles Garrett at the top. Right underneath him, Will Anderson. And rounding out the top 5, Danielle Hunter. All over 21%. So that's huge. And when we talk about versus Jalen Moore, a 54.8 pass blocking grade. He's allowed 3 sacks, or he's allowed a sack in each of his, he's allowed 3 sacks in his last 5 appearances, and he's allowed a 24% pressure rate last week from one guy. Just one guy allowing a 24% pressure rate is insane. It's so high. You can't do that. And then if we look at Mahomes, I think a lot of the other sort of pushback on that potential would be like, well, Mahomes is really mobile. He's crafty. He can get out of the pocket. He can move. We've seen his pressure to sack rate take an increase. Over his last 5 games, it's 19.8% pressure to sack rate. He's taken 3+ sacks in each of his last 5 games. And then it doesn't mean too much, but Anderson in his last game against them in the playoff, he had 2 sacks. I'm really liking what this potential of this pass rush could do. I think it's really going to put this Chiefs team in knots. And I think that we're going to be able to see not only the Texans potentially, I really like the Texans to cover here, but I think that we could potentially see them win this game. Ben, do you have any other insight on this matchup? Do you see anything that I might have missed?
I mean, yeah, on paper, Houston makes sense with how they've been playing in recent weeks. I'm a little hesitant to bet them in this spot, and maybe it's just like this primal don't bet against the Chiefs in a must-win game at Arrowhead, which has been true the last couple weeks too, but even more so here. Judah, I know you recently wrote about create rate. I read it. Everyone should. Great piece talking about how Mahomes is like his superpower is being able to extend plays to create to allow guys to free up and find them, right? So in that sense, he mitigates an elite pass rush a little bit. With this offensive line, like they're down 3 starters, both starting tackles and a very good right guard. I do think it's a little bit different when you're looking last week and the tackles went down in game compared to a full week where you're preparing knowing that those guys are going to play. Right? I do think there is a little bit of a difference there. And will the Kansas City receivers be able to free up? Right? I think generally that there's a shot they do. Right? I don't really have a strong take on this game. It's a very interesting game. I'm probably not going to bet a side on it.
I think this might be the matchup of the week. I definitely can see what you're saying. Judah, tell us a little bit about Mahomes. Push back on me a little bit here, Judah. Tell me why I'm wrong. I agree. I think that Mahomes is definitely a warlock when it comes to creating some of these plays, and that is definitely something that could hinder or put a nail in this. But tell me a little bit about what you're seeing in this one.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what Ben said, which is this is generally a spot where when a team gets a ton of this kind of value on the spread vis-a-vis their defense, and they're playing against a quarterback like Mahomes, that interaction does not map neatly because Mahomes is so good at creating and kind of mitigating a defense. But I think the kind of key point that's leaving me off this game, rather than bet the Chiefs, is exactly what you outlined, which is like this is as bad as it gets, and there's only so much that the Chiefs can do to mitigate. I think it's also very game script dependent. If you're forced into obvious passing situations and you're constantly dealing with 3rd and 8s, those quick passes are not necessarily going to work. But I could also see this as a spot where they kind of use the quick passing game. They use the screen game. Let's not forget that the Mahomes read screen game combo has been among the best in the NFL, and that works to mitigate a pass rush as well. So there are a lot of different kind of ways for the Chiefs to get around the Texans' pressure, and not to mention like Mahomes has still been unbelievable in his escape. And like when he's scrambling, he's got one of the best EPAs in the NFL. His play extension is as good as it's ever been. Like all of that is still true about Mahomes. It's a question of thresholds, and it's a game that I'm, like Ben said, super interested in, but not one I'm going to be betting.
And it's going to be a good one to watch. They picked a good one for Sunday night here. We're in for a doozy. And of course, I already highlighted my player prop of the week, and we're going to get into some more player props. And of course, you guys, if you don't have the PFF player prop tool, make sure you guys go get it with a PFF Plus subscription. Get it with Holiday 30 for 30% off. That gets you the PFF player prop tool, the mock draft simulator, and access to premium stats. Get you the data from all these games, all the player grades, and all the stuff trusted by all 32 NFL teams. And before we jump into our player props of the week, we got to talk about Fabric by Gerber Life. Because, of course, there's some things that school just doesn't really teach you, like how to handle the financial world, or that you have to plan now for a successful future later. And that includes for your kids. Fabric makes it easy for you to set up an investment account for your child now that grows with them and helps to prepare for their financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial future. With a kids investment account by Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Funds can be used for anything benefiting your child, from tuition and books to summer camps and after-school activities. And when they're adults, they can use these funds for their first home, a new car, or even to start a business. It's all online, and setting up an account could take just 5 minutes. Get started investing with as little as $1 a day, then manage your child's account and monitor their investments right from your phone. You can show your child's unique gifting link to family and friends, so instead of them gifting things they'll outgrow for birthdays and special occasions, they can help grow your child's investments instead. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. Portfolios managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors, Inc. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. We have some good angles here, boys. So for starters, just to recap, for anybody just coming in right now, our player props of the week. I'm on Will Anderson to go over 0.75 sacks at -105. Judah, tell me a little bit about what your angle is for this one.
Yeah, going back to Tyler Shuck. I guess it's becoming my beat, I guess. Also almost hit a very nice SGP if Olave came down with that touchdown at the end, following a pretty crazy onside kick. But yeah, this is really a volume play, mostly. The Tampa Bay, this is, plug and play, it feels like, for like 5 years. Massive pass funnel, a lot easier to pass against than run against. And teams have been attacking Tampa Bay, throwing against them at the highest rate in the league, adjusted for expectation. And this is a New Orleans team that has not been pass heavy by any means, but also has not kind of been just plugging into the run. They're right around neutral pass rates. And we've got a very low line at 217, and a Tampa Bay defense, which has really struggled over the last kind of month of the season. Again, you want to look at kind of like EPA numbers. They've gotten a lot of turnover variance, and much of that has to do with the style of play, very heavy blitz rate. And that's a different conversation from effectiveness, but just in terms of volume, this is a team over the last 6 weeks of the season that's allowed the second highest yards per attempt, second highest yards per dropback. And when you get a situation of a team that is very likely to be down in this game in New Orleans, I see this as a spot where Shuck's probably going to drop back to throw kind of 32, 34, 35 times against a pass defense, which has been very vulnerable to yardage allowed. So really a pure volume play here. 217, I think, is a little bit too low.
Yeah, and he played decently well. We have seen him. I pushed back on that a little bit, but Judah, you were right, and he has actually been relatively productive. We've seen him grade out pretty well too. Do you see anything with Chuck, Ben?
Yeah, I like it. Passing against the Tampa Bay defense, I can get behind. And Chuck's looked decent, right, for a lot of this season, so can get behind that one.
Definitely something, pass funnel there for the Buccaneers. We see it a lot. They allow a lot of passing volume to the quarterback position. It's just something that has been the case for them. Ben, let's slide over to you here. Tell us what your player prop bet of the week is for this week.
Is Mark Andrews over 34.5 receiving yards, fresh off the contract extension. And I think we're going to see historic levels of sellout to stop the run from the Steelers defense this week. They could not have lost in a more embarrassing way last week against the Bills. The Bills just spammed inside zone duo, bounced it to the cornerback repeatedly. Steelers couldn't stop it. You listen to Cam Hayward and TJ Watt after the game. They were demoralized, right? And this is a Ravens offense that the last two games against the Steelers in the playoffs and then late in the season, Derrick Henry had 160 rushing yards in both of those games. Lamar Jackson had a big rushing game in the wild card loss for Pittsburgh. I don't know if the Ravens are going to be able to spam the run the same way this year. One, they've not been nearly as good running the football. They're 22nd in rushing success rate this season. If you look at running backs to average less than 0.1 missed tackles forced per attempt in a season over the last 5 years with at least 150 carries, it's 2021 Zeke, 2022 Fournette, 2025 Derrick Henry. Right? Like their rushing attack has not been the same this year. And part of that is Lamar Jackson does not look like he has the same ability with his legs. He looks uncomfortable when he's pressured. He's taking more sacks. They're not using him in the designed run game. Right, so I think that in a lot of ways takes away some of the zone read stuff that the Ravens had a lot of success with against Pittsburgh. Like, I don't know why, when you look at this Ravens offense since he's come back from injury, why you wouldn't just crash the running back, and at least until he proves that he wants to and can pull the ball and run with effectiveness. So basically I say that to kind of point to the idea that I think Baltimore will have to pass a little bit, and they can have success passing the football in this matchup against the Steelers if they're selling out to stop the run. And this is a great Mark Andrews spot. Right? He's third among tight ends in yards per out run versus man coverage this season. He's third in target rate against the blitz. When you look at how that profiles against the Steelers, right, that's what they do. They blitz, they play man coverage. The Steelers are 25th in receiving yards per game allowed to tight ends. They've struggled to cover the position. 34.5, very reasonable line. And I think Andrews can clear it in this spot.
Judah, you see anything from that one?
Sharp. I like Ben's angle here. The matchup filters towards it. I think the game plan makes sense. I like Andrews here as well.
I took a lump on Mark Andrews last week. I thought he was going to absolutely eat the Bengals up, and that didn't end up working out for me. But I do like the angle here. Also, I completely agree. And it is like what you said. The Steelers just absolutely got whooped on the ground. Those pictures of those duo runs were absolutely insane. Mina Kimes on Twitter put out some holes that were massive in that running game. So I completely agree with you. And boys, now we're going to combine it all together. We've got some same game parlays on tap here coming up. But first, we got to talk about some time to grill. It might be a little bit cold out there right now, but I don't think that there's ever a better time to have a nice steak, some brisket, than right now. And you can get that in a gift for someone in your life, say your dad. Ben, I know your dad probably likes a good steak right here, right?
For sure.
And we could get that with Omaha Steaks. Gift USDA certified tender steaks, juicy burgers, cozy and convenient comfort meals, and so much more. And now, during their cyber sale, get 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites at omahasteaks.com. Don't miss the best deals of the season and exclusive limited time offers. Plus, our listeners get an extra $35 off with promo code PFF at checkout. Terms do apply, so see the site for details. But I can assure you, this is going to be the best steak you can experience during the holiday season. You can send it as gifts. You can receive it as gifts. And of course, what did you order? What did you make? You can have all of that with your loved ones with Omaha Steaks. I love the variety. I love everything that we can see. I can't wait to get my hand on maybe a T-bone here. Give me some. What's your favorite cut of steak, Ben?
I'm a ribeye guy.
Ribeye? Ooh, that's strong. That's strong. They have 5 generations of uncompromised quality over at Omaha Steaks. It's backed by an unconditional 100% back or money back guarantee, and they are incredible. They've been in business for over 100 years with all of that expertise in the meat industry. And of course, save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off your select favorites during the cyber sale and an extra $35 off using promo code PFF at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com. promo code PFF at checkout. Terms apply. See site for details. And of course, there's a link in the description and our pinned comment. Go to omahasteaks.com. Boys, now we head into our same game parlays for the week. Ben, tell us what angle you're taking on this one.
This is one of the saddest onslaught SGPs that you'll see here. But we've got Browns. Shedeur Sanders 200 plus, Jerry Jeudy 70 plus, Quinshon Judkins 100 plus rushing at his 41-1. And the thesis here is I think Cleveland's going to have really high play volume. This Titans offense is very bad. The Cleveland defense, especially at home, one of the best defenses in the NFL. If you just look at their numbers at home this season, 3.9 yards per play allowed, that would be first in the NFL by nearly half a yard. They're only allowing a touchdown on fewer than 15% of their drives. That would be second to Denver. And the Titans have struggled against pressure. Cam Ward struggled against pressure. Right? I think we've seen flashes from Ward recently that kind of give you hope going into next year. But against this pass rush, 1.6 yards per pressure dropback for the Titans this season. That's last in the NFL by half a yard. I don't think Tennessee is going to be able to sustain drives. Don't think they're going to be able to have a ton of success, which should create more opportunity for Cleveland just from a volume standpoint. And this is a Tennessee defense that they can move the ball on. Jeffrey Simmons playing really well, but there's not a ton else there. Obviously going to be a lot of Quinshon Judkins. We've seen that. They don't want to force Shedeur Sanders to do a ton. Right? A lot of quick passes. Basically, you're hoping for a few shot plays here to Jeudy, and that's something that Tennessee has given up. They're allowing the fourth highest explosive pass rate in the NFL. They're 31st in receiving yards per game allowed to wide receivers. Jeudy, this is a situation where I do think he'll see some single coverage, and I think he can beat it against these Tennessee cornerbacks. And you're hoping for a couple explosives here to get to that 70-yard mark. And then Judkins, his rushing attempt line is 21.5. He's locked into one of the biggest roles in the NFL. Not going to be super efficient behind that offensive line, but I think he can get enough carries to get to 100 yards. And the Browns can put up a decent amount of offense by their standards in a game where they should run a lot of plays.
I do like the qualifier of by their standards. I think the big thing here is 200 is not a big line. Like 200 is not a big line. I know that, we got to talk about Shedeur and this Browns offense and some of the troubles they've had. He had 209 against Vegas, and realistically 200 is not a huge line. So that is something that is well attainable against a Tennessee defense that has not played terribly well. Judah, do you see anything with that matchup? I mean, it's a little bit of a stinker of a matchup, but anything you've seen in that one?
I'm honestly disgraced with Ben that he framed it as this is ugly. This is as beautiful as it gets, and I love the angle. But I got to be honest, I think there's a better way to build this, which is either playing the attempts for Shedeur Sanders rather than kind of the 200 volume, or just kind of leaning into like Sanders throwing the ball and being decently efficient, because I think there's a decent argument for that. With him taking deep shots. But yes, I love the kind of angle of this team running 75, 80 plays, because Tennessee's not going to be able to generate much offense on that tail. But I threw something like Shedeur Sanders 30 attempts, 260, Judkins 100, Browns win. It's like 190-1. I prefer to kind of go all in there. This is where the money's made. This is the gorgeous bet. This is how you win an SGP. I don't need any of that ugly game. This is how we make an ugly game extremely exciting.
I'll have to get more aggressive. I feel like we did this early in the season with Carson Wentz.
And Carson Wentz. We do that a lot.
Look, and to be fair, that was there. The Carson Wentz was there if Isaiah Rodgers didn't score 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Look, last week I had like an 80 Mitchell, 100 yards, touchdown. Cousins passing, Atlanta -3, and I was sweating like crazy. And then in New Orleans, Miami had some SGPs. These are the games we got to cherish.
And Judah, we'll just go right back to, excuse my French, an ugly game here with another Jets quarterback. We know how you love the Jets quarterbacks. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about your SGP this week.
This is an AD Mitchell play, and for those, I've been talking about AD Mitchell, I think, nonstop for the last 2 years. Really did not help us out against the Rams in whatever that was, week 3. But look, this is a guy who I do a lot of work kind of looking at underlying metrics and separation and kind of things that undergird a player's production. And like AD Mitchell has always popped. And like, we talked about Luther Burden earlier as a guy who has like a high yards per route run. And there's kind of some caution we should always have in those metrics in the sense of a guy who sees the field 30% of the time. It's likely that like there's a selection problem. When he's in for those 30% of plays, they're like very much designed for them, right? And sometimes like the low rate or route participation does not always translate to a high yard per route run. So like, you could have made the same case for AD Mitchell in theory earlier on, but that's just not been the case. Anytime this guy sees the field, he's got a 30% target share. He separates at like one of the best clips in the NFL. And it's like the first time it's been 2 weeks where he actually has a full-time role for a decent quarterback. And this is a Miami defense that is, even with kind of an improved secondary and improved pass defense, I should say, still bleeding explosive plays. Even over the last month, they're third worst in explosive play rate. They do not have anyone to cover Mitchell. Say what you will about Tyrod Taylor. He wants to throw it deep. He's going to be looking for AD Mitchell. I'm just going to run it back again. AD Mitchell breakout was a real hero for the DFS lineup last week. Going back to the well with him here. Tyrod Taylor 260, AD Mitchell 100. I think if that connection's going, especially hitting on some deep plays, I think the Jets are probably more likely to win this game than not. You can get that at 50-1.
And you can get that at 50-1, right, Judah?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean
50-1.
Hey, I think you're onto something there. We've seen a lot more production with Tyrod Taylor back there. It's something that he's been way more productive doing. You see anything on that one, Ben?
Yeah, if you just want to mix it up a little bit, add something, the Dolphins have been absolutely dreadful against tight ends. So if you want some Mason Taylor too, I don't hate that at all in this matchup.
Ooh, we're getting sicko mode, boys. That's these are some vile SGPs so far. I'm gonna go full circle with us here too with another ugly one. For myself, I'm going a little Jacksonville here. We're going Jacksonville money line. Trevor Lawrence 280 plus. Bretton Strange 80 plus. Ben, we're going back to the Bretton Strange well. I'm going a little Alec Pierce 80 plus. I mean, the big thing here for me is got to be this Colts coverage. What we've seen and just how they've struggled recently. They've lost 3 of their last 4, last 2 on the road, and they're going to be on the road here again. They haven't covered a game since October. Jacksonville, they're playing relatively well. They've covered their last 3, and I just really think that there's some passing potential for this Jags offense against the Colts. Weeks 1 to 10 pre-bye for this Colts defense. They weren't great. They were about middle of the road here. In EPA, about 15th. Yards per attempt, they were surprisingly actually about 8th. So really not that bad. Since then, though, over these last few games post-bye, they are 30th in EPA per play, and they are 27th in yards per attempt at 7.75. Also looking like no Sauce Gardner in this one again. Obviously, he had that sort of scary injury there. And just some notable quarterback performances from this team. We've got, 375 from Stafford, 420 from Herbert, and, 352 from Mahomes. Now, those are guys that you expect, right? But then you talk about guys like Brissett, 320. We talked about Cam Ward just a second ago. He had 259 against this defense. And then C.J. Stroud this past week, 276. It doesn't mean a whole lot, but Lawrence, last time he played Indy, he went 28 for 34, 371 yards. Now, of course, different scheme, but similar faces on that defense. So it is something that's going to be worth watching there. I don't think 280 is a massive number that he can't potentially hit here. And when we talk about Strange here, the Colts, another team that just have not been great against tight ends. Second most yardage allowed per tight end, to tight ends. 8.3 yards per coverage target. That is the 6th most in the NFL. And And Strange has been strong since he returned from injury. He had 93 in week 12. I think he had like 48 this past week. And I just really think that is going to be a connection that we see quite a bit in this matchup. And then if we go to the flip side here for the Colts, I mean, Alex Pierce continues to be one of their strongest targets. I mean, he's in for a payday here coming up. He had 78 last week, just under that 80 mark, but he's had 80 plus in 3 of his last 6. And this is a good matchup for Pierce against Greg Newsome, against Monteric Brown, and just against Monteric Brown. Pierce has 3.75 yards per route run. And then if we look at the other potential matchup there with Newsome just has really struggled since the trade. I mean, even prior to that, he is a 47.9 coverage grade. That's 105th out of 111 qualifying quarterbacks. I will take my chances with Pierce against those 2 outside corners, because when we talk about this Jags defense, they struggle covering on the outside. 31st in yards allowed to outside receivers. So that's where I'm going to be angling on that one. Judah, you see anything in that matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like a lot of interesting kind of new developments, which is like the Colts, we can talk about this for a long time, like have not been able to basically work their RPO game that was so lethal on early downs because Daniel Jones can't move anymore. And like that's going to affect the offense. It's affecting the run game. So I don't really know what to make of the Colts offense in that way. But yeah, I think this is like an interesting angle. The kind of pushback I would have is that I think Lawrence spreads the ball around a lot, and especially with Brian Thomas back in the fold. 80 yards does feel like a ton for Strange, in addition to kind of getting Pierce the deep ball. But those do work decently well. Like you need Lawrence to basically do this on volume, I think. And the way Lawrence gets volume is explosive plays from the Colts, which are most likely to come through Pierce. So I don't hate that angle. I think it's a really interesting game and 2 really interesting teams. In that I've kind of been really selling Jacksonville. They keep on chugging along. And Indianapolis, I don't know what to make of them given Daniel Jones' health.
Yeah, it's been a tough look for the Colts since the Daniel Jones injury for sure. Ben, you seen anything of this one?
Yeah, I think my biggest concern is just the volume for Lawrence, especially if Jacksonville wins the game. You just look like in their wins this year, he's gone over 230 yards once. And that was the overtime game against Arizona. They want to be a run-first team. I think this is a matchup where they can have some success running the ball against the Colts. So, like, for Lawrence to get to 280, it kind of, and win the game, it kind of needs to turn into a high-scoring shootout. And I just don't know if I see that in this game. Like, I tend to lean towards the under 47 just because these are 2 teams that also run the clock. Like they're both bottom 10 in play clock remaining allowed at the snap on average. I think both want to run the ball. To Judah's point, like I don't really know what to make of the Colts offense in its current state and what they can and can't do with Jones and his limited mobility. So I tend to think it's kind of more of a slugfest than a high scoring back and forth. But like this, if it is a high scoring back and forth, the Strange, the Pierce, right? Those are 2 pieces that make sense to me, just given the matchups.
Love it, boys. I agree with you. I'm playing it though. We're going all out on that one. So anyway, that about does it for us this week, boys. And of course, for everybody out there, go get yourself a PFF Plus subscription that gets you access to our player props tool, the mock draft simulator, and premium stats that gives you the data trusted by all 32 NFL teams. And you can get that right now for 30% off with code HOLIDAY30. And of course, for Ben Linsey, for Judah Fortgang, for our producers behind the glass, I'm Mason Cameron. Same time next week, boys. Have a good one.